The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of ParaX, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Step outside of your comfort zone. See the world with a whole new perspective. Join us and experience the unexplained on the Paranormal View.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Paranormal View right here on the ParaX Radio Network. I want to thank everyone for being with us tonight. Those here in the chat room and those listening from around the world, we appreciate each and every one. So tonight we got another great show lined up, and hope everybody is doing good and staying safe from the corona, because it's been spiking back up, and we just have to start wearing masks and being real careful if you want to stay safe, because it's some places, I guess, it's worse than when it first started. So just be careful. Tonight we got with us Barbara Duncan.
Good evening, everyone.
And we got Jeffrey Gould.
Hello, hello.
All right. Everything seems to be working good tonight, and I want to thank everybody here in the chat room. Tonight, if you have questions, you can private chat them to Ceiling Cat or H. Foister, and we will get those answered. If you're listening from somewhere else and you didn't want to come over to the chat room, you can still send us a question to the paranormalview@gmail.com, and we will get those answered for you. With that, Jeff, why don't you introduce our guest?
So our guest tonight is lecturer, paranormal researcher, inventor, and radio host Mike Stevenson, Paranormal Man organization, and the audio specialist for the Society of Haunted Research Group, and so many credits it would take the rest of the show. So welcome back, Mike Stevenson.
And thank you very much. I so enjoy how you do that.
Sometimes he buffers and you won't hear what he's saying.
Oh no.
Yeah, you did.
Was I all?
You know what's funny? Now, I don't know if it came out that way, but when I was listening to his introduction, when he got to the word Stevenson, it came, at least what I heard was
yeah, that's
how it came out
that's
on my unit here.
That's the way it does. But it just buffers a little bit like that with him. Then it'll straighten back out. So we got a...
Yeah, either that or he's an android and we really just have to reboot him. He's got to go back to Buck Rogers one of these days. I'm not sure.
Right. You know what's funny is several months back, before all this crazy virus thing started, I actually got to meet Twiggy in person.
Really?
The real guy.
Wow. Oh,
yeah.
Sweet.
Yes. He's a wonderful person. And I wasn't aware of it, but he also played Cousin It on The Munsters.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah. He's been around a while.
Adam's Family.
Yeah.
That was played by Felix.
Slow down, Jeff.
Twiggy. Oh man.
Jeff's
Twiggy
buffering.
was
there, huh?
a British. Oh, God damn it.
Yeah, you might have to reboot it.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah, next week on Paranormal View, Jeff gets an upgrade. He's operating off of ParaX 2.5, and he really should be on ParaX 4.2.
Yeah, I already sent Henry the 2 styrofoam cups so he can help upgrade him.
Now, I know when this corona stuff started, did you pretty much shut down most of your operation? You wasn't still investigating anywhere.
No, I was completely shut down, and it kind of gave me a taste of retirement. I said, "Oh no, not this," because like they say, you slow down after you retire, and that's what kills you. But I mean, I wasn't even working for a while, so since I do work with the local government, they shut me down there too.
Wow.
But as communication things in the city starting to get a little weird, they said, Mike, we need you to come in for a few days, at least a week. So towards the end there, I started coming in, and then they brought everybody back. But the way they're talking now, it's since this mutated virus is running around, they may have to send us back out again. But everything's cool at the moment here in Baltimore.
That's possible, yes. And I know you sent me a message where you've got two. Is it all in the same book, or is it two different books you got coming out?
Well, it's one book. Actually, they were posters that I had made up at a store. But the one which has the name of the book, that's actually the front cover of the book. And it took me 11 years to write that book. And it all started by actually an EVP from a young girl in a graveyard.
And that's the story of Emily and Mary?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because they were actually urban legends, but as it was, they turned out actually to be frozen case murders.
So once you went through and found all the information and got everything straight, was anybody able to do anything with? I'm sure that none of the people's left alive, but I mean, did they maybe go back and write things?
Well, no, as it is, everything is still hush hush because what was left of the family itself, they didn't, for some reason, there was always a thing about, we don't want this publicized. Now, I'm not talking about the book or anything, but they didn't want to go public at the time of the murders. And as it were, I actually got to slowly get a small interview in with the last living relative. And then unfortunately, 6 months after that, he died. But I had to use a little Sherlock Holmes type a trick that they use sometimes on their shows, where I walked in with a folder of photographs of the building, and I asked him about it, and then he says, "Well, we don't talk about that place. We're not allowed to talk about that place."
Really?
Yeah, and that was after I dropped the picture of it on his desk, and he actually took a step backwards as if he'd seen something horrible. Yeah, and that in itself is somewhat of a mystery. But when you get to reading the book, what you'll find is that it's actually, the culprit in the story was a personal friend of the owner, and almost everybody in his family called him Uncle. So it wasn't actually related, but that was his name, family type name, because he had been with the family so long, and he actually worked in the house in the basement. He was the one who used to tan leather for them. But
did you find out how he died?
No, that's a crazy part. At the last time I worked on trying to get some evidence on it, Kathy Moore, who I'm sure you know, she's with my group and she's been on your show before.
Yes.
Her and I were working together at Ramblewood, and I tried to interview him in the tanning room, and he didn't say anything there. But he actually, after I left, I usually leave equipment running. I was still filming the desk that I was sitting at in the tanning room, and the earphones I had on for my RT unit actually slid across the table. Now, I'm talking about this. This was photographed on film with regular movie film, this wasn't even infrared film where this was taken. So you could definitely see if anybody was sneaking around, or it was nobody. He did it himself. And I told Kathy, I said, he's going to want to talk now. When they move something or make a certain sound, I've learned that they want to come back and talk. Wow. But not at that time. So it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. We heard this shrill of a voice, and it seemed like it came from everywhere. It was strange because I kept asking questions about how Emily died, because that was the girl that had the least amount of information. And he yells out, "I killed her too. Now, come on." But I'd already told him I wasn't going to battle him or send him anywhere. I only wanted the information for the book. I told him I was leaving God up to judging him, not me.
Yeah. Wow. Jeff, did you make it back on? Apparently not.
He must be rebooting.
Yeah.
So tell me, Mike, when you talk about videotaping, etc., are you talking about digital recording? You're not talking about actual
the
film,
digital camera.
Right? Okay.
Right, digital camera, high definition. The lowest I'll use is 720, which is still HD. If I go much higher than that, I won't have any space left to transfer anything, because it takes a lot of memory to record hours and hours of actual video, particularly in high definition.
True. Now, in your opinion, let's talk about that a bit, because there's a lot of people that would say, no, it has to be magnetic tape because somehow it translates over better. But don't you get much better imagery and are able to debunk faster with a high definition digital camera?
I agree with you 100% there. It is much easier to debunk anything, and also authenticate anything for that reason. Because with the digital, you could actually break it down into the small frames. Now, you could do that too with regular movie film even, and I've done stuff like that, work frame by frame. But it's extremely time-consuming to do that. I mean, they did that in the old days, and actually that's how they made a lot of cartoons, painting them frame by frame. But believe me, it takes long enough at 720 HD to do, well, put it this way, 4 hours of 720 HD averages about 16 gigabytes.
Right.
And I never have left less than 6 cameras running.
Wow.
And deliberately, I have cameras crisscrossing, because I've found that some spirits will get curious about your camera, so they will envelop themselves in your camera in order to be able to see what you're seeing. Because, as more and more people are starting to finally believe that the voices you're getting are actually coming through brainwave patterns, they don't have ears and mouths, to speak and hear from. So they collect your thoughts. That's what they're picking up and sending back from. And also why 3 or 4 more people in a room confuses them, because they can't discriminate between the different voices coming in all at the same time. It actually confuses them. So it's funny. I was doing a spot one time for Ramblewood, and I had to readjust the camera, and I stood up and walked to the camera. I didn't have anybody using the camera. I just had it up against the wall. In fact, Kathy was there too at this time. And I went up and I readjusted the camera to better center the picture. And when I played it back to test the recording, there was an old man type voice that came out saying, "You cornered me." And it was just at the point where I walked up to the camera.
Wow.
So obviously I trapped him in the corner. He was evidently looking at the camera, and I cornered him in the camera.
So then you leave your Yeah, you're running high definition cameras, but you're also running the audio off of that too, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Along with other tape recorders?
Yes.
Okay. That makes total sense to me.
Yeah, I particularly love using my RT unit, and if those out there are wondering what is the RT unit, it's a real-time unit, not to be confused with hooking earphones up to a standard recorder and hearing what's coming through the microphone, because in an RT unit, that's not what you're hearing. You're hearing what is already recorded, and you could put it a second away or up to 6 seconds away. I keep mine about 5 to 6 seconds because, believe me, if you're asking a question, 5 seconds is not long for a question to be asked, and you need time for them to respond. And sometimes, if you're not paying attention, spirits will actually answer your question before you ask it.
Cool.
Yeah, because they've already read your brain, so they're getting the information before your lips are.
That makes sense. Let's talk about.
Was that Jeffrey coming back?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Hopefully I'm better.
All righty.
So, how do you make up for the pixelation when you're doing that sort of thing? Obviously, you're not fogging the room with anything. So, with the higher definition cameras at night, are you using the long range vision type so you're not getting much pixelation? Or how do you account for that?
Well, I keep everything focused in the rooms, and I generally don't use foggy stuff, but I have used like laser grids and come up with some interesting results with that.
Okay.
But generally, the rooms are filled with a high tolerance of infrared or even ultraviolet.
Okay.
I've done it both ways and singly both ways, just to see what I can get out of it. Because one thing I've noticed, particularly about spirits, is they sense infrared. Even though they're a spirit form, they sense infrared, but they don't seem to realize when there's ultraviolet out there. So they may walk through a space that has ultraviolet and not even realize it.
So how are you determining that they sense the infrared? Do they come up against it and then stop, or are there actions in there?
Several times I've noticed where, let's say, one might materialize in a room, or they may pop out behind a chair or something. And once they get around where the camera is, which is also where the infrared is pointing, they seem to feel it and they jerk back. It's like when a mouse is running across your floor and hears a noise and it runs back the other way. It's kind of like that. And this has happened repeatedly. So, I mean, at first, of course, I just made note of it. But later on, since it was happening all the time, and I don't mean every time, but every time it happened, I noticed there was a similarity in the circumstances that I noticed. So it was the infrared that they were depicting being there. And at times I had the place flooded with just the ultraviolet. They moved throughout without acknowledging it. So that led me to believe that there must be certain frequencies of light that they're not sensitive to.
Well,
You might be on to a good ghost repellent there, Mike. No, I'm serious. If they're that sensitive to infrared, wouldn't you think that there's a reason behind that? It's either in the wavelength pattern or something else is going on there.
Well, yeah. I mean, it could be the wavelength pattern, and it could also be that just maybe they don't want to be caught on film.
Okay.
And that's kind of strange for me to say, since I have hundreds of pictures. But those are entities that wanted me to take a picture of them. You know, they did something to arouse my attention in a certain direction, and then like a paparazzi, I would spin around and snap pictures or what have you, and get them that way. But I know that since most of these entities are people or were people at one time, they will still act like people, and some people just don't want to be involved. And the spirits are the same way. They don't want to get involved in our conversation. They didn't want to talk to us. I was in PA one time doing an investigation, and I decided to stop into this Russian graveyard, and I was trying to do an EVP session with the RT unit, and I was not getting any responses. And finally I said, well, let me change my method. And this is how also I started learning different things, different factors that would help me and anyone else for that matter when doing an investigation, little tricks that help you do things better. And what I did was I said, I'm not Russian by birth. I said, but I am Polish by 2/3. Therefore, I am at least Slavic. And if there's anyone here who wants a message delivered, since I'm Slavic, I would be happy to forward something if anyone has anything to say. Now, immediately after this, and it's for the first time, I must have been in there an hour or so, I heard this voice came through the RT unit. It sounded very, the person gave me the impression that they were well-to-do, well-educated, and it was just that kind of impression, an aristocrat, let's say. And what he said was, my time has ended.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah, so choosing those words told me, yes, this is an educated person, and he doesn't want to speak, but he was courteous enough to tell me so. And I said, I thank you for this and hope you have a blessed night. I'm packed up and left.
Well, considering what he said, maybe he just ran out of change for his payphone.
Could be.
Well, now, when you're talking about the infrared light, have you ever asked them the question if the infrared light bothered them or they could see it?
No, I haven't, but I will put that into my next list of questions.
All right. I mean, if they can do that and they're knowledgeable, then they should give you an answer.
Absolutely. I know there are questions and answers they're not allowed to ask or respond to. I'm well aware of that.
Really?
Oh, yes. Yes.
For example?
Well, you can't really ask them to describe where they're at.
Okay.
Now, I say this by the fact I've never asked the question, but I've asked all the way around the question. So it's like I minused out all the possible questions, and I was only left with the ones that obviously were taboo.
Huh.
And if you get involved enough in these type of sessions where you're actually, let's say, in the gray area of crossing the limit, you will be watched by the same people or angels that watch them, and they're called overseers. And I've actually got recordings of them discussing me and what I'm doing.
I got a question from the chat room. Kat wanted to know, not allowed by who or what?
Well, I'm going to stand on a limb here. I'm going to say God.
Okay.
And he's assigned certain angels as overseers, and those are the ones who govern the world. And I say the world meaning as in their world of the plane of living they're in and the plane of living we're living in.
Okay.
And I've learned a lot. I know things right now that I can't reveal yet because I was actually told, no, they aren't ready for this. But because of what I've been able to understand, and that's what really the basics behind it all is, the more you understand that the paranormal is not paranormal, it's actually supernatural. The more you understand that, you can start figuring out things or getting answers to things. But again, there's certain questions that they're not allowed to answer to.
Now, what kind of, and you've told me this before, what kind of spirit box is it that you use?
Well, generally, I usually use the Ovilus. I have used the spirit box, the one they call spirit box, a couple of times, but I always favor to the Ovilus.
The Ovilus, okay.
Yeah.
And can you still buy those? And what's the
They're
price
not
range?
made anymore that I know of. Wait a minute, I'm lying. There is a model out, I think, that Bill Chappell still makes. It's nothing like the original. I think it hooks up to your computer now, so it will actually start printing up the words said. I'm not that familiar about it because, at least at the moment, particularly with the virus thing going around,
Right.
my funds are really low for getting one of those. I do have both an early and a later model of the Ovilus. In fact, I have 3 different models, but the one model I have is the one made right before he came out with a version that actually distinguishes male and female voices. Now, I don't understand that. I mean, I can tell you everything about the Ovilus as far as how it's built, what it does, what each portion does. I can tell you that because I've analyzed it all the way down to individual components. But I haven't actually tinkered with the one that gives dual voices. So that I can't answer at this point.
Well, now, is that the one where you don't hear anything until something's said and it says, Mike?
Yes. Yeah. Fortunately, all of their models do that. And it's true that they call out my name. And it doesn't even have to be my Ovilus, which is the interesting thing. If someone has an Ovilus there, yeah, it'll start hollering for me, Mike. Wow. And often it's this person. He won't ever give me his name, but he's the one who is the husband to the woman Barbara from Ramblewood, because he's always looking for her. She's never around. It seems.
The girlfriend, yeah.
Yeah.
He thinks I got her locked up in a box somewhere. You know?
So what number Ovilus is that you use then?
I have what's called the Ovilus 3.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't mean that it's the third one. Actually, I think it's the 5th one.
Right.
Because occasionally he'll give something a different name if it does different things.
Right.
It's like I have one. It's a PX, and it's very compact. It's the size of a pager actually, and it works just like the rest. But it was the first one that had additional features that were actually there before in his programming chip, but
Right.
never activated. These are things like it can sense when something's getting near it by giving a ping sound out, almost like sonar.
Right.
Yeah. So that was one of the extra features that it had.
Can you find some of those like on Amazon or different places?
Yeah. Right. Occasionally they will show up. They will show up on eBay or something where someone's selling them. Often in the case where you find them like that, it's some wife or someone who is selling off her husband's equipment. And he may have passed that. He don't need it no more.
What do they usually run for?
They vary in price. Let me think. What did I pay? I think for the Model 3, I think it was just under $300.
Okay. Well, I'll look and see if I can't find one. If you see one floating around somewhere, let me know.
I certainly will let you know.
That's usually
I'll have it floating away.
that's usually the only piece of equipment that I've been looking for.
Oh, okay.
So, Mike, let's talk a little bit about some of the other stuff that's out there, because there's an awful lot of apps out there now, like Ghost Radar and Ghost Talk, I think is the other one. And I want to get your opinion on them.
Well, let me tell you, I'm not one that really believes in apps. And I say that because, number one, knowing how a lot of the actual equipment, I mean, the real stuff works, and the parts that are put in there to pick up the information that's being given out. Writing an app to make everybody's phone work, honestly, it's far-fetched, because if you have a dozen or so sensors in a device, and I haven't seen one that had that many, but, well, let's say the Obelisk has 6 of them. But nonetheless, with those sensors, they're there for a particular reason, and if you understand what the device actually does, I'm talking about the sensor itself, and add that to how he built the Obelisk, you'll understand why it works to an extent. But he himself even said, I built this thing and I don't know how it works. Well, he did a good job. At least the spirits were able to figure out what it was and work with it, because that's the important part. He built a bridge device between our world and theirs. And I got to give the man credit. I mean, he did a good job with that.
Well, I have my Ghost Radar on now.
I'm telling you that I don't believe in apps.
I have my Ghost Radar on now, so if it says Mike, I'm going to burst out laughing.
Yeah, now I'll be honest with you. I was, where was I? I was in PA. I can't remember the town right now, but I was doing a benefit there, and I had an entire auditorium filled with people. Here's the funny part. I was supposed to take 40 people on an investigation. And even though everybody not the people, but those in charge of this whole event got mad at me because I refused to walk them around the building to get anything. Instead, I actually had a classroom on the equipment I had there, and I explained how everything works and what it does. And I also explained, because a lot of the equipment in the paranormal is really something made for everyday life in a particular job or something. So I explained what this thing does for real, and then how it's used in the paranormal. So in doing this, there was one particular time where this woman, she had her cell phone, and she had some kind of an app there, and I don't even remember what it was called. But when I was talking about the fact that there was too many people to do an investigation because they couldn't distinguish everybody's voices or thought waves from each other, and I said this, and the woman stood up and she walked up to the podium where I was at, and she showed me what the device said, and that was totally interesting. It said, listen to him. He speaks the truth. So that was my one and only actual true-to-life confirmation that I know what I'm talking about. The first time I ever had a spirit confirm it, which I felt kind of good about it, you know. But the bad part was the fact that here I just put down a bunch of apps, and here it shows up on an app. Now, keeping that in mind, this also means that is there a possibility that they can do something with an app? Obviously, they can. If they can manipulate a TV set, they can manipulate your toaster. So, yeah, it's not far-fetched for it to happen, but it's not something that's going to happen every time you turn it on. So that's why I do shy away from the apps.
Okay, well, the only words coming out of it so far is grandmother.
Well,
maybe it's Mike's grandmother.
Got long hair.
She might be trying to contact you.
Yeah, Henry, I was just thinking the exact same thing. I was just thinking, maybe Grandma wants to talk to me.
Yeah.
Well, my number's in the book. Please give me a call.
Now,
you got to enjoy this line of work. Believe me, and it is a line of work, even though it started out as a hobby, but actually it's what would I call it now? It's a field of learning,
right?
And I never want to stop learning, and I don't want to just keep the information. You have to, if you got information, you want to pass it on, and that is one thing that has really been in my crawl for all the time I've been involved with the paranormal. I mean, after the last 250 years, there's very little improvement in investigating habits. And that should tell people that something they ain't doing right.
Wow.
Yeah, and everybody will go out with their method of investigating, but they won't tell you about it.
No. But
that's bad news.
You know that it was really big investigations for a long time. And
Right.
it's kind of slowed up to an extent, I believe.
Right.
People has found out that you can't just go somewhere and get all this stuff like they're showing on TV and all the bad things that goes on. It doesn't work that way.
No, it don't. And I really wish that more investigating shows would explain that within the show.
Yeah.
In fact, I actually did want to do a TV show similar to that, where we do an investigation and then we would debunk it on a show.
Well, you know why it's like that? Because networks want ratings. And
Right.
if nothing's happening on the show that they're filming, they want people to make something happen,
Right.
And it's not.
That is so sad.
Yeah, it's not right.
No, it isn't.
I mean, I've been to a lot of places, and you'll sit there for 2-3 hours going from one room to another and not really get anything. And then there's other times you go back to the same place and you'll get 2 or 3 EVPs or get some activity. And
Right.
they don't play just because you come. So
Right. Now I have, for instance, now asked the spirits to be extra nice to certain people at Ramblewood when they come to investigate.
yeah,
If there's a group that I agree with their methodism and how they do things, and they're not doing this just to play or mess with the spirits. They actually want to learn something. If they're like that, I'll have a talk ahead of time with the spirits. I'll say, look, guys, don't let them go empty-handed. Give them something, And whenever I've done that, the people come back to me and told me, wow, you should see all the stuff we got. I said, well, I understand that.
yeah. The sad thing is the place that I had been going to for 3 or 4 years, the Preble County Historical Society, where
Right.
we've gotten some good stuff. You even heard the EVP that I got in the barn when we asked
Right.
the thing to walk across the loft. You even heard that. Well,
Heard footsteps.
yeah, they the caretaker there and the girl who actually took care of the place or did all the stuff there for this historical part. They let her go. They let him go. They aren't doing anything to keep the grounds up, and it's a shame. I'll never get to go back there, most likely, to do any more investigating. So
That's a shame.
yeah. And why they did that, I don't know. I mean, this girl done a fantastic job of
Yep.
holding different things every part of the year, groups coming in, and the guy who actually lived right close to it always took care of the grounds and set everything up, would move stuff and everything. I mean, they just canned them, and I don't know whether it was because they didn't have the funds or what it was, but she didn't leave on good terms, put it that way.
That's a shame, really.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of places out there that really have information that is useful, and not just with paranormal. I'm talking about everyday lives. You know, a loved one may have been left with an unanswered question, and somehow you can stumble on it and get that person closure there. When it's done right, these are the kind of things that can happen. I mean, you actually can help them and they'll help you. But there are some people who, I don't know for what reason, they decide not to do it anymore. I don't know whether they had some other thoughts or thought they were breaking someone's rules somewhere. But I don't know what it is either, Henry. I don't. And it is sad. It's so very sad, because to me, I look at it as a scientific study.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I really try to understand more and more, because I found the more I understand, the more I'm allowed to understand. So I definitely have this thirst for knowledge about it. And, you know, I pray to God about it. And I say, look, God, please, you know, let me learn this. If I'm capable of understanding it, let me learn it. And if you could just give me some type of warning when I'm crossing the line, so that I don't go poof. And I mean, say it just like that, you know, it's like this thing, where's Waldo? Where's Mike? Oh, he was here a minute ago. Wait a minute. There he is on the obelisk. Henry.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting there. So, is things opened up now to where you're going back to Ramblewood, or you got anything lined up for there or somewhere else?
I did, but I had to cancel it when the tri-state area around here all got together and closed everything up. Things are starting to open up, and I am planning. I really want to plan something nice, and I'm planning on having a weekend there. I've been talking to several of my associates. I want to do a weekend investigation and even have like a summer cookout. And there's one person who's a member of a band. I was thinking about seeing if I could get the band to come up and play for a couple hours and do an open house in the building at that point. You know, I'm trying to put together something with all that to reopen the investigations.
Well, until the corona is completely done, I doubt if anything like that can take place, because it's resurgence again, because people's not wearing masks and safe distancing and all that. Everybody wants to run to the beach or run to big family outings or cookouts or block parties or whatever, and they're not being protected. And so now it's, booming right up again. So yeah. I got a feeling it's going to be a while before you can actually go do stuff like that with you.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. And I've been doing some reading. There's actually 2 additional versions of the virus where it has mutated, and they actually have different symptoms and everything. And just because you may have actually contracted the original virus and got over it, it doesn't mean you won't catch any one of the 2 extra ones.
Right.
Because the way I've read it, they're completely that different. And yeah, I mean, just before all this went down, I actually did have permission I actually had 2 weekends in a row reserved there. Just unheard of. You get 2 during the summertime.
Yeah.
And I was told I could do whatever I want as long as I don't go over 10 people per day.
Right.
So I was planning actually 4 separate investigations. two one weekend, two the next weekend. But then everything happened, and oh well. But it's still going to happen. It's just that it's postponed.
Yeah, there's not anything going on around our area. There is nobody holding any investigations or like over at Post Town. There's nothing being able to be done there. So it's just kind of like shut down right now.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I have done, only because I was requested, I did do one private investigation several weeks back. I've almost completed going through the evidence, which was really, really an interesting investigation.
Was it like a private residence or?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was a price. And since I'm not mentioning any names or anything, I think I can give a little bit of it out, which was rather interesting. Most of it I had actually resolved with the initial on-location interview. The woman who lived in the house, she worked for a nursing crew that would take care of elderly people in their home, and what have you. And she would stay for a couple hours or like 8-hour shift, and someone else would take over. There's like 3 or 4 people would take turns watching someone in their own home, okay, who were too old to be left alone completely on their own. Well, she was the one whom the particular person relied on for almost any answer, and would always say, like, should I do it this way? Should I do it that way? And he would respect only her answers. So, it was rather interesting that things were going this way. And eventually what happened was he started talking to everybody about just giving up and dying. And as it were, we got to a point where he did die, but it wasn't on the shift this woman worked. But what happened was, now she had been given from the family certain objects from his house. So we automatically figured, well, there could be the connection of what's going on. You got his objects in your house, and he relied on you a lot. Well, what's interesting is he actually continued to ask her, actually did other people, or he did other people, but in particular her, should I die or not? And she would tell him, well, that's entirely up to you, if you're done with this world and you want to kick in the bucket, that's up to you. Well, this is how she would answer him, giving him his choice, and it's only between him and God, to make that choice. Well, he, like I say, he did die, and right after that was, in the middle of the night, her house would start perking up, things would be going, the dog would be barking his head off, being scared to be in certain rooms, and then whatever it was would always come to whatever room she was in, even if she'd sleep in a different room at night. There's something would come to that room, and most of the information they were getting about what was going on was from the reaction of the dog. So you'd see the dog looking at something and following it around the room. Well, in that interview, I said to the entity, and I couldn't see him at that point or hear him, but I did have the RT unit running, but I never actually found his voice on it. But there were a lot of other noises that were unaccounted for. But at any rate, I said to the gentleman, I said, if this is so-and-so, and I'm not even going to mention his name, she gives you permission to die, so you don't have to keep coming around asking her if it was all right that you died. Just go now and go through the light. It's okay. And what's interesting is after that interview that night, although I had equipment running for the next part of the weekend, even after I left, we didn't get anything. So she has not been bothered again since that family conversation with me and obviously him there in her living room. So he took the message she gave him, that it's okay that you died. Now you can just go to heaven. So that's pretty much how the investigation went. And honestly, I could rate that as probably one of the best investigations I've ever had for that reason. That just through information of what was going on, what was going down, what was happening to her, I was able to piece that together during the interview and actually resolve the whole issue. And of course, that does come from a lot of experience I've had that I was able to analyze this, even right there. So, like I say, that went very well, but it shows too that sometimes the elderly, even young people, rely on others for answers. And when someone becomes haunted, a lot of times it's someone looking for an answer. Not just that they think you're in danger. It could be they're looking for an answer, or they're looking for the okay to be dead.
Wow. Barbara? Jeff?
I'm just fascinated.
Yeah. Waiting for Ghost Radar to say Mike still. And, it hasn't said Mike yet. Lots of other words, but nothing.
When I show up at your door, it'll start going crazy.
Well, I guess my question is that, they do come find you, and I find that interesting. And I'm wondering, do you think that with the COVID virus and everybody staying indoors and not doing any investigations, have you found out that they're coming to find you even more?
Yes. Just about a half hour before our show started, I seen a woman in my bedroom. She got up from it. As I turned to look at her, because I felt her presence there, and as I turned to look at her, she stood up from the chair and walked out. So I know it's my ugly face. I'm scaring these people away. But one time I seen her. I heard her rattling around in my living room. So I actually got up out of bed, walked in the living room, and she was standing there. And, here's Mike, right? There's a woman standing there at 3:00 in the morning in your living room. What do you do next? Well, I turned around and went back to bed. And she disappeared. So,
it's like, hello, turn the lights off when you're done.
Yeah. And the funny part, I don't know, every time I've seen her, I have yet to see her face.
Huh.
It can't be worse than mine. But remember that one movie, I think it was a Japanese movie about this woman that crawled out of a well?
Oh, The Ring, yeah.
Yeah, and you can never see her face until the last moment. It'd just be long hair. Well, whenever I see this woman, she's got long black hair. Now, she hasn't led me to the well yet, but...
You watched the videotape, did you?
I did, actually.
Oh.
Did you just pick up a word a couple minutes ago, Barbara? Did it say something?
Hold.
Said what?
Hold.
What did it say?
Hold.
Hold.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard it say something.
Was it old or hold?
Hold.
Hold.
Old.
As in hold something.
Ah.
I got you.
Or
That's interesting.
to hold off or pause.
Yes. Could be, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Maybe I'm telling too much information.
Well, and also I'm curious that you say that they hide features of themselves, and is it like just covering themselves with their hair, or is it that you simply can't see it, like it's a blank face with no features at all?
In this particular case, it was no face at all showed. It was like I was looking at the back of their head, but their head would have been on backwards because, when she was walking forward, I was still seeing, the hair as if you were looking at someone in the back.
Well, I often wondered if there is such a thing as a filter there where they can stop you from seeing certain things. If they don't want them to show their face, but they want to get their message across, does it come off as a blank face? Have you ever seen something like that?
Yes, and actually I have some recorded evidence of it. I told a story, and it's in one of my books too, about talking with an apparition for 35 minutes. And there was a part where I was trying to take a picture. If you recall, I was talking about the gentleman who died a month or so after I interviewed him. I didn't know it was him that she was directing me to, but she kept telling me he had the last of the information, but wasn't allowed to give it out. So I was trying to take pictures of his gravesite to use in the book, and I deliberately tried to paparazzi her into it, because every time I tried to take a picture of her, she would back away. And I finally did get one good shot of where she was standing, and there was no person standing there, but from that place to up in the sky was a shower of really bright light. It's almost as if she was a hologram.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure she wasn't, but that's the closest I could describe what it was. So I was seeing that. Now, I'm hoping this wasn't something I was not supposed to repeat, but because I actually put that in the book too. But you can see the beam of light.
Well, I mean, there's physicists who say that we're actually a hologram, that we live in a holographic universe. So
right. That could very well be true. I mean, even Einstein, not Einstein, the psychiatrist guy, Freud.
Jung? No.
Freud once said that how can we ever figure out if the dream we're having is the dream or our reality is the dream?
Sure.
Yeah. And, each one have vivid details, and they could very well be switched, and us not knowing it.
Well, that's always been a long-standing concept with my brother and I, in that when we're dreaming, everything seems perfectly normal. Horse walks through the room, no problem. A building you've been in is suddenly a labyrinth, no problem. But we only question reality when we're awake. So how is it that we question this reality, but we don't question our dream state? Except maybe that's the real state.
That's a very good point, and very possibly true.
Wow.
Oh, we could be part of someone's dream.
Well, there are a lot of Eastern religions that have that we are a dream of various things, and there's also the concept of our being part of a computer simulation.
Oh boy! I hope I'm not the one with the virus.
Well, they aren't doing us justice in. I can say that. That's for sure.
Yes. Yes.
So we got about 2 minutes before we take a break. So, Barbara, you got another question there?
Well, it goes back to the partial images, and I'm wondering if that is simply nothing more. Do you think it's nothing more than they simply don't have enough energy to fully materialize, or they don't want to show parts of themselves, or could it be a combination of both?
Wow. As you were asking each one of those questions, I was ready to adapt to the answer of the next part of your question, but you re-answered all of my question that I was going to have as your answer. If that makes sense. So, what I mean to say is that any portion of that could be 100% correct.
Okay.
I'm hoping one day I'm able to come up with an answer that shows more or less what part of that is the correct and which is not.
Mm-hmm.
That'll have to be on another show.
All right, it's just about time for us to take a break. So, in the meantime, while we're out on break, I want you to ask your Ovilus a question for us and see if they will say anything or something to me or Barbara or Jeff. And I don't care how you ask it or whatever. So,
Well, Ghost Radar just said circus.
Well, we definitely are a bunch of clowns, aren't we?
all right.
We would be doing it if we weren't.
Just remember your mic is live, so kind of like don't say anything or mute it, your sound until we come back on. And you won't hear anything during the break, but you'll hear me talking when we come back. With that, Barbara, you want to take us out?
What?
That's Jeff's job.
Oh, it's Jeff? Okay.
Good luck. Yep.
All right, you take
I
us
know.
out.
I know. Madame Tussauds is open today, but it'll be a while before I actually get scheduled. I think. I don't know if at all. So anyway, you're listening to the Paranormal View on para-x.com with your host Henry Foister, ceiling cat Barbara Duncan, and myself Jeffrey Gould, and tonight's guest, the Paranormal Man Mike Stevenson. So stay tuned for more of the Paranormal View after the break.